Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 18, text number 3. Not very much. Chadam dosha pad iti eke Rama prabhur manishinaha yagyadana tapa karma nachajam iti chappare. Just recite that again. Chajam dosha vad iti eke karma prahur manishinaha yagyadana tapa karma nachajam iti chapare. Chajam must be given up. Doshavat as an evil. Iti, thus. Eke, one group. Karma, work. Prahu, they say. Manisinaha, great thinkers. Yagya, of sacrifice. Dana, charity. Tapaha, and penance. Karma, works. Na, never. Chajam, are to be given up. Iti, thus. Cha, and. Apare, others. Translation. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty. Yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be given or should never be abandoned. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There are many activities in the Vedic literature which are subjects of contention. For instance, it is said that an animal can be killed in sacrifice, yet some maintain that animal killing is completely abominable. Although animal killing in a sacrifice is recommended in the Vedic literature, the animal is not considered to be killed. The sacrifice is to give a new life to the animal. Sometimes the animal is given a new animal life after being killed in the sacrifice, and sometimes the animal is promoted immediately to the human form of life. but there are different options among the sages. Some say that animal killing should always be avoided, and others say for a special or for a specific sacrifice it is good. All these different options on sacrificial activity are now being clarified by the Lord himself. Omegan Timirandasya, Gananjana Shalakaya, Chakshurunmalitam Jena, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravan Pacharine, Nirvisesha Shunyavadi, Pastacha Vistarine. So this is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is just making sure that it's clear to act or not to act. He's in a dilemma whether he should act in the battle or whether he shouldn't act. And you know, he's asking Krishna to clarify, and after the next verse, Krishna clarifies. And clarifies by saying these activities are dependent on how a person's working in the modes of nature. There's different activities people perform, different kinds of sacrifice, different kinds of so many charity penances, but they're not necessarily correct. And it says that's why this Varnashram system's in place, so that people perform the correct activities according to the direction of the Supreme Lord. Like for a brahmachari, he has to, well, his main duty is to study Shastra, become well versed and fixed in devotional life or in spiritual life. So that's his yajna. That's his tapa. Tapa means to give up something we wouldn't ordinarily do for a higher cause and do something we wouldn't necessarily do. So nobody wants to go to school, nobody wants to learn, everybody wants to play. But, you know, if we want to make material progress, we have to go to school so we can, you know, prosper in life. And same with spiritual life. The tapa is there for the brahmachari, and then the tapa is there for the grihastha. There's different kinds of grihasthas, but, you know, Brahman grihastha means that actually they should, according to Prabhupada, according to the Vedas, they're allowed to accept charity, but they must give it away straight away. They shouldn't keep it. So that's their tapasya. And there are other tapasya like controlling the senses for a higher cause in married life. Giving charity, this is what we've just been talking about. We don't unnecessarily keep things above what we need to our particular ashram. Then there's, you know, the vanaprastha. It's we give up the family life, which is usually reasonably physically comfortable, or, you know, to live in a physically uncomfortable situation and also mentally uncomfortable situation where we just rely on nature to provide our means. So the Brahma means living in the forest. So it's an extremely difficult thing to do, to leave a, so-called cushy, is that the word? Or a relatively material facility to give up all those facilities to live in the forest. Very painful. So that's tapasya. And then the sannyasi, the stage further, it means that we give up all family connections and all attachments and just work completely for the spiritual advancement. We should be fixed in knowledge at that point. And then we utilize our sannyasi utilizes his time for trying to give spiritual enlightenment to the rest of society. That's the real sannyas. Sannyas, as we know in the traditional, well, not so traditional actually, but traditional sannyas is to preach. But the sannyas that Vedic sannyas means that we try to avoid things in this world and live on a basic minimum, but we have to live, so we can't avoid everything. And this is where the Mayavadi sannyasis, they're mistaken thinking that, they try to just study Shastra, they don't work. But it's saying sacrifice, penance, and charity must be done. So there has to be some activity, sacrifice. They think sacrifice is studying the Shastras and then negating everything. And ultimately, we're all Narayan. But Prabhupada spent a long time in a lecture actually defeating this. He said real renunciation is following this Varnashram system. And even though we may give up no particular activity, we don't give up sacrifice, charity, and penance. That has to be there all the way through human life. Human life is meant for sacrifice. It's meant for spiritual realization. So this is the important point, that whatever ashram we're in, it means it's an opportunity to purify ourselves according to our psychophysical condition. And so, the difference is that the devotee, he renounces his, what's that word? Anasakta Shivisayam Yatanam Upayonjita Nirbanda Krishna Sambande Yukta Vairagam Uchite. He doesn't renounce everything, but Yukta Vairagya use everything as a service to Krishna. And the Mayavadi sannyasi, Panchikataya Budaya, Sambanda Vasana, Mukshubir Parichayava Vairagam Palgu Kachite. Because it doesn't belong to him and it has a use, he just tries to avoid using it. So it is not complete renunciation. It's not his to renounce anyway. It's Krishna's. So, this is the human life. We're talking about tapasya. There has to be that effort in everything we do in this world. Otherwise, there's no result, really. If we want to get on materially, there has to be some effort. But in this Kali Yuga, it's very, very difficult to perform any tapasya at all. We can't even, in fact, people's attention span is it's less than a second sometimes. It's, what do they call it? What is it now? Levanati. That's the 11th of a second. When you're talking to people, it's very difficult to keep their you know, for spirit, we have to focus in spiritual life. We have to focus on the object. So, you know, Krishna took special mercy in this Kali Yuga. And, you know, he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he taught us the process of yajna, which is Sankirtan yajna. Krishna Varam Tvisa Krishnam Sangam Bangas Nisparshadam Yajna Sankirtan Priyaye Vijantihi Sumedasa. Sumedasa, those who are intelligent, they'll take this process. You know, and will we worship the form of the Lord, Tvisha Akrishnam, that is not actually the color that the Shastras explain. Krishna means black or cloud-like color. But actually this particular verse is talking about Tvisha Akrishnam. And he's also appearing with many of his consorts. He doesn't appear with his usual consort, which is his counterpart, Srimati Radharani. Because actually his body is golden in color, not, and this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so that complexion, Sravana Vana Hemango, Varangas Changaranani, Sanyas, and he'll appear in this golden complexion and take renounced sort of life in order to help people to perform this simple tapasya. And that golden colour is the colour of Srimati Radharani. And his mood is also the mood of Srimati Radharani. This, you know, by material standards, I don't know whether it's true spiritually, we're all spirit souls, but, you know, it's said that the fairer sex are they're more soft-hearted than the male sex. So this is coming from Srimati Radharani. She's extremely merciful. This is one of the 26 qualities. And this is why Lord Chaitanya is so merciful, because he's taking on the attitude and outlook of Srimati Radharani. We'll not go into the verse too much, but we can understand from this verse that, you know, Krishna's appearing in another form, in a very merciful form. This was Advaita Acharya appeared, Mahavishnu, in order to try and preach, but he realized it's the people of the age of Kali are just too fallen. And therefore he prayed very strongly for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. And this was predicted by Gargamuni when he did the naming ceremony for Krishna, Ananda Maharaj. And he told him that this form has appeared in three other yugas: Rakta, red, Pita, yellow, and white. So this is the golden or yellow incarnation of the Lord. So we're going to speak about this incarnation and this not incarnation. We're going to speak about Srimati Radharani. And this is Radha Krishna Pranaya Varikti Ladini Shakti Azmat Ekatmavo Api Bhuvi Pura Deha Vedam Gato Tam Sri Chaitanya Kam Prakatam Aduna Tad Vyam Chakyam Aptam. So this is the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, the expansion of Srimati Radharani. She's not an ordinary living entity. She actually has the same potency as Krishna, an expansion of Krishna. So this is why Lord Chaitanya was very potent. Krishna and Radha all in one in preaching. Saladini Shakti, or the pleasure-giving potency. You know, Haritoshanam. This is when we please Krishna through Srimati Radharani. That's our process, that we serve Krishna through Srimati Radharani. She's number one servitor. So Krishna becomes pleased when we perform Atabhumbhya Dvijashras, that's Varnashrama Vibhagashka. So Radharani becomes pleased when we perform our duties nicely in the Varnashram system, and then Krishna becomes pleased. So we're still talking about, you know, controlling the senses. You know, Lord Chaitanya, he was the most renounced. Just a minute, I'll not be a minute. I'll be back with you. Lord Chaitanya was the most renounced. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Lord Chaitanya is the most renounced, although he's coming to deliver to us the most exalted relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He exhibited a really, you know, out of this world renunciation. He set the standard for a sannyasi, actually, that he wouldn't accept a pillar, he would lay on the ground, he would eat very little, he wouldn't go near the opposite sex, he had to stay at a distance to pay their obeisances. So in order to achieve that highest goal, which seems to be sense gratification, the relationship between lover and beloved, then it means it's extremely, it's required to be extremely in control of our senses. And Lord Chaitanya, he said, what did Lord Chaitanya say? Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. What's that verse now? Anyway, when Krishna sees the renunciation, he says renunciation or tapasya or sacrifice is a thing that is actually maintains or supports the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, enthuses them. When Lord Chaitanya sees that renunciation, he becomes extremely satisfied. Mahaprabhura Bhaktaganera Vairagya Pradhan Yahandaki Prisihana Gora Bhagavan. He became extremely pleased. We're not talking about Lord Chaitanya, we're talking about Srimati Radharani. We're going to talk a little bit now more about Srimati Radharani, but through Lord Chaitanya, because the mood is there. She's on one of the 26 qualities. She's very, very merciful. So we're going to highlight how she's merciful to the conditioned souls in this material world. You know, when we offer something to Krishna, if we offer it through Srimati Radharani, she'll be very, very pleased, and she'll go to Krishna and say, this is what this devotee is offering to you. Please accept it. This devotee is far more devotional than I am, far more advanced than I am. And he says Krishna is obliged to accept it. When Prabhupada was walking on the banks of the, what is it, the Radhakund, or it was at Govardhan, I think it was at Radhakund actually, and he saw the Babajis there. It was actually Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and one of his disciples said, these Vaishnavas are very nice Vaishnavas. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, yes, but they're not like us. And then he explained, he says, they actually worship and try to please Krishna. We actually worship and try to please Srimati Radharani. That's the difference. If Radharani says, do this, we do that. If Radharani says, don't worship Krishna, we don't worship Krishna. Which she'll never say that. So I'd just like to expand on how she's merciful and how she appears, how mercy appears through the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya also. So at the Rath Yatra festival in Jagannath Puri, at some point there was a competition between Jagannath and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would go forward and Jagannath would hurry to actually catch him up. Then he'd go behind the cart and Jagannath would stop. And so what was Lord Chaitanya doing at that point? Why was he doing it? It's explained how when the gopis were, and Srimati Radharani heard that Krishna would be going to Kurukshetra because there was an eclipse, they also went to meet him. And they tried to actually pull his cart back to Vrindavan. They wanted him to return to Vrindavan in the mood of a simple cowherd boy and reciprocate with them. And so actually this is what Lord Chaitanya was doing with Lord Jagannath. How much are you remembering me? If I fall behind, will you carry on or will you actually wait? So this was the competition that was going off at Rath Yatra. And I've got some verses here actually, which at some point it became so, it describes how Lord Chaitanya was exhibiting all ecstatic symptoms. And at some point he started offering prayers to Lord Jagannath. So I can just start to speak about these prayers. And they started in the Madhya Leela. 13:121. It's a very famous verse that Lord Chaitanya quoted this verse. He said only Sarup Damodar could actually understand it. That very personality who stole away my heart during my youth, is now again my master. These are the same moonlit nights of the month of Chaitra. The same fragrance of malati flower is there, and the same sweet breezes are blowing from the Kadamba forest. In our intimate relationship, I am also the same lover, yet still my mind is not happy here. I am eager to go back to the place on the bank of the Reva under the Vetasi tree. This is my desire. This is from Pajavali. And it's talking about Srimati Radharani speaking about taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. And Lord Chaitanya is actually speaking this prayer now in that same mood. And there are other prayers that go. He said that after hearing Srimati Radharani's statements, it increased Lord Krishna's love for the inhabitants of Vrindavan. And, he realized that he was always indebted for their bhakti, for their devotion. And so he tried to pacify, in many words, Srimati Radharani. So we won't speak too much about. Anyway, Krishna, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, my mother, father, cowherd boy, friends, and everything else, are like my life and soul. And among all other inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis are my very life and soul. Among the gopis, you, Srimati Radharani, are the chief. Therefore, you are my very life. You are the very life of my life. My dear Srimati Radharani, I am always subservient to the loving affairs of all of you. I am under your control only. My separation from you and residence in distant places have occurred due to my strong misfortune. So Krishna carries on like that. And he says that at that point, Krishna became anxious to go back to Vrindavan. And he spoke one very important verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10:82-44. Mani bhaktir hi bhutanam amritatvaya kalpate tichiyat asin matsneho bhavati namad arpanaha. Lord Krishna said, devotional service unto me is the only way to attain me. It's actually, this is a different translation. In the Bhagavatam, it says, those who actually render devotional service unto me, they can attain me. But by your special loving affection, you have purchased me. Very special. Krishna's talking. So what we're talking about here, that Krishna will allow somebody to go back to God by devotional service. But in this sampradaya we're in, Srila Prabhupada, through Lord Chaitanya and the Goswamis, has given us a very special process of devotional service. By your loving attitude, you have purchased me, Krishna says. And that's the only reason he wanted to actually return. So Krishna's always attracted to Vrindavan. He never leaves Vrindavan, actually. He says, and later in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, when he retired from so-called active preaching, he would sit in the Gambhira with Swarup Damodar and his other two close associates, and constantly explain or hear about these topics about Srimati Radharani. So I just want to say one more story about the attitude of Srimati Radharani and the gopis. It's something which maybe we don't appreciate so much. Like in the Manchester temple, we've got now Radha and Krishna on the altar, but they've always been there in one respect, and this story will explain why. Well, it won't explain exactly why, but it'll give the mood, put it that way. When the gopis were actually, and Srimati Radharani, Krishna blew his flute because previously they'd asked to become Krishna's associates, Krishna's loving associates. And so Krishna remembered that, and at some point in the future, he actually played his flute. We all know the story how the gopis left everything to go to Krishna. And Krishna tried to give so many arguments, model arguments, why they shouldn't come to the forest to meet a young boy in the forest. They should go back and be chaste to their situation, their husbands. But the gopis actually, defeated him by saying, actually, you're the source of everything. If we actually surrender to you, then everything's taken care of. And so, Krishna defeated the gopis and they had to accept. And then, of course, Krishna is actually in everybody's heart, and he could understand the mood of the gopis, that they were wanting to increase their devotional service to Krishna, but they didn't know how. Devotee feels like that he's not doing enough. His service is insufficient. And so Krishna realized that, and he created pride in the hearts of the gopis. And so at that point he left. He gave them an excuse to leave their association. And then later he created pride in Srimati Radharani's heart. She was thinking that all the gopis have been deserted by Krishna, but Krishna is still attracted to me. And so she asked Krishna to carry her, sorry. And at that point, Krishna left also with Srimati Radharani. And then, the gopis were thinking, oh, there's only one gopi who's now with Krishna, and they were feeling a little bit of transcendental envy. But then when they actually saw that, at some point that Srimati Radharani had also been deserted, they started looking for Krishna everywhere. And then when they couldn't find Krishna, they started, talking to the animals if they'd seen Krishna. And then they started to offer prayers. These prayers are called the Gopi Gita. And the 9th verse of these prayers is very important for this particular pastime, is that it's explaining how Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibir Editam Kalma Sapanam Shravana Mangalam Srimadhajtam Uvi Vrinantiye Buridajana. Buridajana means very merciful. But they're actually reciting about preaching to the conditioned souls. Can you imagine that? In the spiritual world, they're having pastimes with Krishna. I say it was in the home of Vrindavan, but they're having a reciprocation with Krishna. And the verse that, the most important verse, is speaking about the nectar of your words. And the nectar of your pastimes, life and soul, those undergoing material existence. Such words are actually broadcasted by elevated personalities. And this actually relieves the conditioned souls from their material sojourn in this world. Basically, that's what the verse is saying. Those who actually spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. So they're actually, this is the mood of Srimati Radharani, that she is actually eager for the conditioned souls to go back and reciprocate with Krishna. So Srimati Radharani is there through Lord Chaitanya, or the Panchatattva. And this is actually, same mood was exhibited when Lord Chaitanya was halfway through the Rath Yatra festival, and they stopped after his very active dancing, and so he went to rest in one garden. And previous to this, King Prataparudra has been petitioning the devotees to get in audience with Lord Chaitanya, but he refused because he was a king and a materialist, superficially anyway. So they said, now's your chance to actually meet Lord Chaitanya. So they asked him to dress in ordinary dhoti and kurta, not a king's outfit. And they ushered him into the garden where Lord Chaitanya was taking rest. And they started massaging Lord Chaitanya's feet. And he started reciting these verses that the gopis had recited previously. And Lord Chaitanya was very enlivened by these verses. And he kept saying after every verse, go on chanting, go on chanting. But then when he came to this verse, the 9th verse, he actually stood up and he embraced King Prataparudra. And he said, you are the most munificent. You are the most munificent. He said, Prabhupada says in the purport, he didn't even know who the king was. But he says at that point, he embraced him and gave him all his mercy. So, you know, in Lord Chaitanya's appearance, it's the same mood as Srimati Radharani. Those who spread the message of God are most munificent. So if we want to get Lord Chaitanya's mercy, and to get Srimati Radharani's mercy, then we have to understand Srimati Radharani's mood. And it's the same as Lord Chaitanya, same mood. That we try to relieve people from their suffering condition in this world. And it's by that mood and that activity that we get Srimati Radharani's mercy and Lord Krishna's mercy. So Srimati Radharani is, and the gopis, what kind of service is it? It's actually service in separation. Just like Lord Chaitanya or Lord Krishna left the gopis and they were pining for him. So that's the mood of our disciplic succession. And that's the mood of Srimati Radharani. She's always longing to see Krishna. And he says this is the most ecstatic mood, this is the most intense mood when we don't have somebody who we love. When we don't have their association, then we actually feel more attraction. Of course, this is a spiritual attraction, not like a material attraction, which is also very painful. It appears to be painful in spiritual life, but it's not. And this is the same mood of the Goswamis. They pray in the Sat Goswami Astakam. Prabhupada comments that they're looking for Krishna. Are you on the Govardhan hill on your banks of the Yamuna? Are you here? Are you there? This was their mood in executing devotional service. And so we're in the most fortunate position, actually. Prabhupada has given us all the information that we need in order to go forward in spiritual life. And at the same time, develop this same mood that Prabhupada developed, or Prabhupada experienced. But yet so much apparent difficulty. But he just kept on serving in that mood of separation. And ultimately everything became very, very nice. So we can follow Prabhupada's mood, that he's actually in this material world. When he visited London, actually, he was asked by a reporter, so what do you think to London, Your Grace? He said, London is hell. He said, London is hell. And the reporter, he was actually completely flat-footed. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to say. He didn't expect an answer like that. And then Prabhupada could see his confusion and difficulty. He said, but it's great credit to the English people that they have created such a wonderful empire from such a miserable place. So it got him off the hook, but it was still making the same point. Yeah. So Prabhupada's given us everything. He's given access to serve in his sampradaya, which is service. The Srimati Radharani wasn't introduced into there was 4 sampradayas. The first one is the Ramanuja Sampradaya, which explains about, or is Madhava Sampradaya, which explains, which defeats the impersonalist philosophy. And talks about regulated devotional service. Then there's a Ramanuja Sampradaya, which I can't remember exactly what it gives now, but it's talking about, oh, that's right, spontaneous devotional service. That's when it was introduced. And then the next Sampradaya is the Rudra Sampradaya, or Nimbarka Sampradaya. Nimbarka is the Acharya for the Rudra Sampradaya. And this brought in the importance of worshipping Srimati Radharani and the gopis. But then the mood was finally established when Lord Chaitanya appeared, and within the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya, we went more into the reciprocation of in the mood of Lord Chaitanya, by not just keeping it for ourselves, but giving it to others. So this is the conclusion, is that we've got the highest process of devotional service. So we should actually understand this point and relish every moment that we've got to serve in this movement. It's beyond compare. And this process that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur related, that we're devotees of Srimati Radharani, is the most elevated way of worshipping Lord Krishna. We don't want to worship Lord Krishna directly. It's not as pleasing as worshipping through his devotees, and especially when we worship through, or when we serve through Srimati Radharani. So it's coming up to past. Srimati Radharani is let's have a look. There are 64 qualities. Sorry, not 64, 26 qualities. She is very sweet. She is always freshly youthful. Her eyes are restless. She smiles brightly. She has beautiful auspicious lines. She makes Krishna happy with her bodily aroma. She is very expert in singing. Her speech is charming. She is very expert in joking and speaking pleasantly. She is humble and meek. She is cunning. She is expert in executing her duties. She is shy. She is always respectful. She is always calm. She is always grave. She is expert in enjoying life. She is situated at the topmost level of ecstatic love. She is a reservoir of all loving affairs in Gokula. She is the most famous of all submissive devotees. She is very affectionate to elderly people. She is very submissive to the love of her friends. She is the chief gopi. She always keeps Krishna under her control. And one which I missed out, she is always full of mercy. This is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is from the Ujjvala Nilamani, Sri Radha Akarana. Okay, so we can stop there. Does anybody have any questions?
There are some devotees watching on YouTube as well. I'll have a look at and see if they have any comments, any questions. No comments or questions, Maharaj, on YouTube yet. Right. Okay, so thank you very much, Maharaj, for that wonderful explanation, and that you mentioned how Srila Prabhupada has given us everything, and yeah, so we can just fully utilize and be happy. Prabhupada has given us everything. We need not to look for anything else outside ISKCON.
All we got to do is serve Krishna and be happy.
That's it. That's it. Simple formula, simple recipe. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj. His Holiness Dayananda Swami Maharaj ki Jai. So, quick announcement for devotees that we have the evening program planned from 7 p.m. There will be class and flower abhishek and Harti will be there. So please do take the time. There will be Kirtan as well to join at 7 p.m. Same link. Hare Krishna. Happy Radhashtami to you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare Bol.
Prabhu.